that 2 lawmakers were shot. One has perished. Her and her husband are dead. That is DFL Speaker Emeritus Melissa Hortman. We've learned that also Senator John Hoffman and his wife were shot and injured. They are in surgery, and we're hoping for the best for them as well. As Commissioner Jacobson said, this is a dark day in Minnesota, and it's a dark day for democracy, but he says we will stand as Minnesotans and not let this deter us from being the democratic state that we are.
Yes, he said these are public servants, leaders. They were targeted in a violent and cowardly way. That's the way that they described it. And you heard from Governor Tim Walz, who called these leaders friends,
yes.
Not just colleagues, but friends. And a hard day for everyone who is mourning the loss of Speaker Emeritus Melissa Hortman and her husband, and thinking about their other colleague, Representative Hoffman.
Yes.
And the other things that we learned here are that I found interesting to learn about is that once there was, they'd seen what had happened at Hoffman's house, police proactively went to check on the lawmaker in their area, which was Hortman.
Yes.
And when they got to her home, they saw what appeared to be a police officer at her door. And they knew this was someone who was posing as an officer, but there was a car in the driveway, an SUV with lights on, posing as police, and they exchanged gunfire with that person who was at the door. They tried to get her husband help immediately, and then went in with a drone to then find and discover that Speaker Emeritus Melissa Hortman was also shot and killed there. But that person got away on foot, and
yes.
that's why there is this shelter in place right now for people living in that area, because they have the vehicle, but that person ran away on foot, Reg.
That's right, and there's a massive manhunt in that area. There's a 3-mile radius around the Edinburgh golf course that is basically being a shelter in place. They are looking for that suspect right now. They say that he is a white man, he has brown hair, and they believe that he is wearing a black body armor over a blue shirt and blue pants. They add that he is misrepresenting himself as law enforcement. They do ask that if an officer shows up to your door, they will be in pairs. They won't be alone, to make sure that you're safe, and do not answer your door unless there are 2 officers there. If there is 1 officer there, to call 911 immediately. They will know directly if an officer was sent to your door to find out, to make sure that you're safe.
Right. This is a time they said, they are talking about this is law enforcement
yes.
who's supposed to serve and protect the community, and this person impersonating an officer does put people potentially at danger, and that's why they are asking people to call 911
yes.
to make sure this is actually an officer if you encounter one, or if there was someone at your door. That is really important to mention. They said call 911. The other thing that we learned is that this person had a manifesto, and we don't want to go too much into
yes.
that, there with other names on there
that they were going to target. So that's why this manhunt is so important. That's why so many, they said hundreds of officers are actually in that area, basically looking for this person who has been impersonating law enforcement. They are working with state and local, and now federal officials are involved in this manhunt for this man who was impersonating a police officer. Once again, we're told the shelter in place is still in effect in Brooklyn Park. Make sure that you are aware of your surroundings. Police say they're looking for a white man with brown hair. He is wearing black body armor over a blue shirt and blue pants. He is misrepresenting himself as law enforcement. You want to make sure that there are 2 officers going out at all times. If you are approached by officers, it needs to be 2. If it's 1, make sure you call 911 to make sure that person was there. Once again, a dark day in Minnesota. We're all saddened by Melissa Hortman's death and her husband. She's been a frequent guest here at WCCO,
yes.
and I would say a friend of WCCO. She's on Esme's show a lot, yep. and just a dedicated public servant, and we're just devastated here today.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've talked to other lawmakers who said they are safe. This is what they say, physically safe, but say they, they have law enforcement on their street as security right now, but say that they are saddened and they are worried for their colleagues. And so while you can say physically safe, that's a relative term this morning, as we know now what has unfolded. We've learned more about what's unfolded with Speaker Emeritus Melissa Hortman and her husband killed in this targeted attack, and another lawmaker and his wife injured, still, at the hospital. And I know everyone is thinking about them as the doctors and nurses and all the teams work to heal them this morning, Reg.
And as there are a lot of political demonstrations planned for today around the Twin Cities, we're told that extra security will be out there to make sure people are safe. They want to make people aware that this is going on, that this massive manhunt in Brooklyn Park is happening. And once again, they are looking for a white man with brown hair. He's wearing a black body armor over a blue shirt. He is impersonating himself as a police officer. And we trust police, law enforcement. And so when they come to your door, you think they're there to help. And he really preyed on our trust of our law enforcement in our community.
Yeah, and it's definitely something to keep in mind this morning as we are, there are so many people in mourning this morning, but also a time where we do need to think about our surroundings and see who's around us and pay attention.
Yes.
And they're asking people, even in the community now, to pay attention. And if you see someone that looks like they are not who they appear to be, to call 911.
Yes.
To really pay attention and have situational awareness today, Reg.
Well, our Adam Duxer was live at that press conference as it was happening at the Blaine Department of Public Safety. Adam, you were there asking questions. What more do you know?
Yeah, Reg, I can tell you that we cover, a lot of these press conferences, obviously not for this reason, but I don't think I've been at one that has had this kind of feeling in the room. Again, I'd say shock and just sadness from the folks who are up here and even just the media members here in a bit of shock this morning, just as they try to learn about what happened here. But we did get a better understanding of what really seemed like a chance encounter between Brooklyn Park Police and the suspect who is still at large. As Chief Mark Bruley here in Brooklyn Park described that his officers went to go proactively check on Hortman's home because they knew she lived in the area. They knew she was a political leader. And that was after the shooting at Hoffman's home. And they say when they went there, that's when they encountered that suspect in the driveway. And at first they say they thought it was another police officer in the driveway. Again, they describe a police sirens on, and they say they encountered that man, that suspect, outside of the home, and they say that's when that suspect shot at them before going back into the home and eventually escaping out of the back of the home. But I would say Reg and Jennifer, everyone we just heard from, in a absolute state of shock and sadness now. Governor Walz obviously speaking and then not taking any questions, immediately going out of this room. And again, law enforcement really focusing and driving home the point that there is a manhunt going on right now. They are trying to find this person. They have state, local, and federal agents and law enforcement all working together to try and make that happen. But again, they're telling people, if you live in this area, in this 3 or so mile radius, if someone comes to your door, do not answer. Again, especially if they say this is a person who looks like a law enforcement officer, and they say unless there's 2 law enforcement officers, do not answer your door at this point. Again, they are really just trying to drive home that point that they are still searching for this person. But again, Governor Walz said the state lost a great leader, and he reiterated he lost a great friend today. Others saying, this is a dark day for democracy here in our state. Again, we're still working to piece all this together. Just a lot of information coming here in Blaine in the last half hour or so. But again, just a shocking day. I can't remember a day quite like this as people are still working to kind of piece everything together themselves. But one thing about those rallies, we anticipated there would be 10,000 plus people at the state capitol today for that planned rally. We are told there will be extra security at that rally. We've already seen a number of the local rallies. There's dozens of them here in our state. We've seen a number of them already canceled. But the largest at the state capitol, we're told there will be extra security on hand. We're still working to see Walz and Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan were scheduled to speak at that event, as well as Attorney General Keith Ellison. We're working to figure out if they're still planned to speak at that event. But guys, just a shocking and saddening moment here, I'd say, in Blaine. You rarely see folks who spoke up here just in the spirits that they were, just truly shocked by this news.
Thank you, Adam Duxter, live there in Blaine. And once they said this is targeted political violence, and once again, there is a massive manhunt for this person. Police say they are looking for a white man with brown hair. He is wearing black body armor over a blue shirt and blue pants. Once again, he is misrepresenting himself as law enforcement, and that's probably why these lawmakers opened the door, because they trust law enforcement and thought someone was coming to their aid.
Yeah, the idea today is to take precautions, call 911 if someone does come to your door, verify who that person is before you answer the door or do anything. We'd also like to share this remark from Senate Republican leader Mark Johnson. He released a statement on the shooting saying, quote, "My heart is broken over the events that unfolded overnight and the loss of life, security, and peace that we are all feeling right now. The families of Speaker Emerita Melissa Hortman and Senator John Hoffman are in my prayers. Senate Republicans are unified in our condemnation of this brazen act of violence. We thank law enforcement and Capitol Security for their coordinated effort responding to that threat and delivering justice." And Reg, here's another statement.
Yeah, House Speaker Lisa DeMuth released a statement, quote, "I am shocked and horrified by the evil attack that took place overnight. Please lift up in prayers the victims as well as the law enforcement personnel working to apprehend the perpetrator."
And let's bring in Susan Elizabeth Littlefield right now, who has learned more about Speaker Emeritus Melissa Hortman. Can you tell us a little bit more about her background?
Yeah, I mean, you said the victims, and that's the center of the story here. I mean, there's so many elements to it. I think there's shock. People said this is like a movie. I can't believe this happened. But at the core of this is the victims here. We want to keep them on the forefront of our coverage today. Now, we're learning as we go here. I know there's so many people at home going, what's going on? I'm scared. We are getting information as we can. We're going to try to answer your questions as we get information. We're pulling up pictures now. I know we're going to hear so many stories about these victims who are in many ways public servants. And they've shown that through the years. I want to tell you a little bit first about John Hoffman. We've been kind of reading through his biography this morning. He and his wife, as we are told, have been in surgery this morning. They did survive. They are hoping that they're going to continue to recover today. Now, we know that Hoffman serves the district of Champlin. That's the area we've been talking about this morning, the North Metro right there. He's 60 years old, and he is married to a vet. They also have a child, so these are two parents here that were involved in this. And we think of their daughter right now. We think of all the people supporting them in their lives. We know that he's a business owner, very connected in the area right there. He went to the University of Idaho, then got his bachelor's degree at St. Mary's University, and has continued to be a public servant in the party, the DFL here in Minnesota. We're going to get some photos up. We're getting those in as we speak. Our producers are working on it. But I also want to talk about Speaker Hortman right now. If you watch our coverage here, you know that she is a regular. She comes on so loyally to our show with Esme Murphy on Sunday mornings. And she is such a passionate leader. We have so much video of her right here to show you because she's had so much to say through the years. You know, she is a Minnesota native. She grew up in Spring Lake Park in Andover, so that's her area. She's lived there. She graduated from Blaine High School. She went to college at Boston University. Then get this, I mean, her love and service. I mean, I've heard people say that politics can be a calling, and I think a big example of that here is that she worked back then for Senator Al Gore and John Kerry before returning to Minnesota and starting law school. And then she has been involved in politics since at least 2004 here. Speaker of the Minnesota House, a very powerful position, and she has spoken on so many things. She has so many passions, so many interests. We've heard her talk about the environment. We've heard her talk about transportation. We've heard her talk about K-12 funding, and something else too. We're going to let you hear from her for a second. As I said, she's a regular guest on our show. She actually has been a proponent of compromise, which is just kind of gives you a chills on today. But that she wants compromise in our law system. And we had her on our show a few weeks ago, and I think we've got some sound here. We're gonna let you hear just to get some perspective of the passion she had. Okay, we don't have it yet, but we're getting that together for you. Because like I said, she has been on our show many, many times. So we are going to continue to get pictures, get information, and keep them at the forefront of this story. And guys, I know we're getting a lot of statements here. Everyone chiming in, everyone cares. And again, it goes back to these 4 people who are no doubt heroes in many ways.
Governor Tim Walz said, you know, we can have political discourse, but targeted political violence is something that we should not be doing. It's okay to talk things out, but this is just, like I said, a dark day in Minnesota.
And I do think that's very interesting you bring that up, because I think that no one can argue that we are in a divisive time in our history, but if there's one thing people can agree on this morning, it's that this should not have happened.
And you heard, you know, as Governor Walz was talking, I mean, this is a friend of his, not just a colleague
Right.
there, but a friend, and you could hear, you know, the
Ally.
pain in his voice as he was speaking and had to deliver that really just devastating news this morning
Yeah.
about losing his friend and her husband.
You could see the shock in his eyes.
Yeah.
This is personal.
Yeah.
It is personal, and these are people, as he mentioned, that are public servants that chose to serve Minnesota.
Yeah.
And to look at what can be done here in the state to make our state better, safer, cleaner, whatever it is, education. I mean, they cover everything for everyone living here in Minnesota. These are people who, who ran for these positions and chose to serve their communities and the greater state. And this morning they were targeted in this violent attack.
Yes.
You know, posing as from someone who was posing as someone who serves and protects, violating everyone's trust, is what the leaders said this morning.
Yeah. And I think if we can go over that again, guys, from the information we got from the press conference, for anyone who's tuning in right now, can we kind of go over what we know so
There
far?
still is a stay in place, a shelter in place in the 3-mile radius area around the Edinburgh golf course. They are a massive manhunt. They're looking for a white man with brown hair. He's wearing black body armor over a blue shirt and blue pants. He is once again misrepresenting himself as law enforcement. We've been told, Adam Duxer also was at that press conference and says that police now are working in pairs. So if they do approach you or come to your home, they will be in pairs. If it's one person, make sure you call 911. Do not answer the door, because that could be the man that they're looking for.
And obviously, I mean, they thought this was law enforcement. So this must be something very seriously to look out for and to pay a very close eye to. So the pairs thing is the big flag.
Is very key today. And that's specifically for Brooklyn Park Police, who are going out in pairs. We don't know about other law enforcement across the metro.
Good point.
So if you see one by themselves in another community, call police, verify who they are. Dispatch or whoever answers will be able to help you verify who that officer is. But what we know happened now from that press conference from leaders is that police first responded to the home of Representative John Hoffman. And when they discovered he and his wife, who had been shot several times, they got them help. And then a police officer who learned about this proactively said, we should go look at our lawmakers in our community in Brooklyn Park.
And that gives me chills right now.
Yes.
And because of that, police responded to the home of Speaker Emeritus Melissa Hortman, where she was with her husband. And when they got there, what appeared to be a police officer was at their door with an SUV with lights, what looked like it could be a police vehicle. They exchanged gunfire with that person. They tried to get Melissa Hortman's husband help, and then went in, they said, with a drone and discovered her down as well. But it was the quick thinking, the proactive thinking of law enforcement who were able to, who went to her home and then, you know, exchange gunfire with this suspect who they are now looking for. They have his vehicle, but we're told that person fled on foot, and that's why that manhunt is now underway.
Out the back door he went, and so that's why there's a big manhunt in Brooklyn Park for the suspect. It's a 3-mile radius around the Edinburgh golf course that is a shelter in place. Police say they are looking for this white man with brown hair. He's wearing black body armor over a blue shirt and blue pants, so he looks just like a police officer. He's misrepresenting himself as law enforcement, so please be on the lookout. Do not approach him, we're told, because he is armed and dangerous. Make sure you call 911 if you see him.
And shelter in place, I know we use that term, but basically that means don't go anywhere. Stay home.
Stay home.
Yeah.
Stay safe.
Stay safe.
Stay where you are. And we know that Commissioner Bob Jacobson said, it's a hard day for Minnesota and democracy, but we're not going to allow this violence to define who we are and how we move forward. But the way he categorized this is that these public servants, these leaders, were targeted in a violent and cowardly way. And he said they exploded the trust of those in uniform, saying it's deeply disturbing to those who wear the badge with honor and responsibility. And it's because this person, who there is a manhunt now for, posed as a police officer, impersonated a police officer, and approached these homes as also a public servant, posing as a public servant, violating that trust.
I think we do have some sound from Melissa Hortman now to show everybody just how dedicated of a public servant she was.
Yes, and I want to remind everyone, I mean, she's devoted much of her life to that since college. She worked for, at the time, Senator Al Gore and John Kerry, and she has poured her soul into this in Minnesota since 2004. So we do have information that she and her husband were victims of this and did not pull through. So we want to keep them at the center of this. And just remind you, I mean, she has come on our show so much. She has spoken up for her constituents, and she has also spoken for the importance of compromise. And that's what you will hear here from just a few weeks ago, what she had to say here on WCCO.
I think, speaking to the compromise, it was a demand by the GOP to settle the budget. We fought really hard. We were in a room about 12 hours a day together from about April 30th through May 14th with Senate Majority Leader Aaron Murphy and Governor Walz and me, fighting really hard to preserve this health care. These are people who live in Minnesota, they work in Minnesota, they go to church with us, their children go to school with our children. It's a poor population, they pay taxes just like the rest of us. And Minnesota Care for undocumented folks, it's an income related program. So not everybody in the state gets Minnesota Care, and not every undocumented person in the state gets Minnesota Care. It's an income-based program. So these are people who don't have a lot of means. They can't go to the private market and buy health insurance because they can't afford to do that. So this will hurt real people. But it was important to resolve the state budget agreement so we can keep the state functioning. And when the Republicans won 67 seats in the election in November, it was clear they would come to the Capitol and they would demand a price for their participation, and this was the price they demanded.
She's saying we didn't get what we wanted, but compromise is important in the government.
And that speaks to what she did, in her role, was looking to compromise.
Yep.
And it speaks a lot to who she was, as a person.
Yeah. And that was just a few weeks ago. Yeah. She was right here on WCCO talking about this. So we do want to just tell our viewers out there that we are going to continue to keep these victims at the forefront of our coverage and tell you more about them, because as Jennifer said, they are public servants. And essentially, guys, I keep thinking of, it kind of gives me chills, the times like this when we have to come on into emergency coverage. And often, we had the Burnsville incident last year when we lost law enforcement officers. And to me, it also seems here, I mean, these people also were injured, in some cases died in the line of duty, being public servants. It is targeted for what they do. Right. In this case, these lawmakers here in Minnesota, Democratic lawmakers here in the state, and unfortunately, this happened, and their spouses also victims in all of this. I know many people are in mourning today, and will be for some time for their colleagues and these people who served the state of Minnesota. No doubt. And I know there's so many questions too. I think a lot of people wondering why these two, why were they targeted? And perhaps there were more and they intercepted into, we are asking these questions too. We will be for months and
that is something we
years.
learned from the press conference, that they did take the suspect's car, and there was a manifesto in there that had other names of lawmakers that maybe that he was going to target as well. So we're thankful that the quick actions of law enforcement actually prevented him from doing that.